Have you ever devoted years of your life to a place, believing that loyalty and hard work would be enough? Daniel Morgan did. For nearly a decade, he was one of the pillars at Aurora Corporate Solutions, responsible for almost half of the company's revenue. But on an ordinary morning, without warnings or ceremony, he was called into a meeting that would change everything. Within 15 minutes, he was standing outside with a box in his hands and an avalanche of unanswered questions. No scandal, no fight, just a new vice president with a rehearsed smile and vague words about renewal. The most curious part? Daniel didn't yell, plead, or panic. He just walked away. But what happened in the following days proved that his firing was not the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Because some people don't need to raise their voice to cause an earthquake. 3 calls. That's all it took. 3 phone calls changed the destiny of an entire company. This is the story of a silent revenge, of true loyalty, and the price paid when people are treated as disposable. Get ready. Every detail will make you rethink what value really means in the corporate world. Daniel Morgan arrived that Monday morning as he had for nearly 10 years. Before everyone else, strong coffee in hand, inbox half cleared. He knew the company was going through a turbulent phase, with rumors of leadership changes and a new VP of sales taking over. Still, nothing could have prepared him for what was coming. Shortly after 9 a.m., he received a message from the new VP's assistant asking him to meet at conference room 3B. No further explanation. The room was cold, silent, and smelled like new plastic. Leonard Vance was there, waiting with a closed folder. On the table and an almost indifferent look. "Daniel, thanks for coming. Let's get straight to the point." His tone was calculated, too professional for the occasion. Leonard talked about goals, innovation, fresh air. He used phrases like refresh the team and maximize talent. But his real message was clear. Daniel was being let go. "We need a new posture in the team, more boldness, more alignment with Aurora's new objectives." Daniel didn't argue. There was no room for it. His track record, his impressive sales numbers, his loyal network of clients, all seemed to vanish in minutes. He received a severance package, already prepared, as if the whole thing had been rehearsed. Leonard stood up and extended his hand. "Wishing you success in your next chapter." With a nod, Daniel left. He picked up a cardboard box at reception and headed to his office. He packed a few personal items, a framed photo of his daughter when she was little, an internal Client Relationship Excellence Award, and a fountain pen gifted by a grateful client. He didn't look around. He didn't say goodbye. He knew eyes were on him, but he wouldn't give them the spectacle they might have expected. The walk to the parking lot felt longer than ever. The sun blazed through the windshield, but Daniel didn't start the car immediately. He sat there in silence. He didn't feel anger. He felt a strange mixture of relief and purpose. Something inside him was realigning. This was not the end, and he knew it. The game had only just begun. At home, he set the box down and went to his home office. He turned on his computer and opened his contact list. 3 names appeared almost automatically. 3 people he knew would listen. 3 phone calls. But that would be tomorrow's task. Long before the formal dismissal, the signs were there, subtle, but impossible to ignore for someone who understood the company's inner workings. Daniel was always attentive to details, and in the months leading up to the cut, something had started to shift. The first clues came as exclusion. Strategic meetings he once attended were now happening without him. At first, he blamed scheduling conflicts, but soon it was clear the invitations simply stopped coming. Meanwhile, commissions started arriving short, blamed on contract revisions or temporary administrative adjustments. Leonard Vance's attitude was no secret either. Always polite, but with a calculated coldness, he treated Daniel like a relic of the past. He hyped up newly hired professionals who, while less experienced, spoke the aggressive market language he favored. In meetings, talk shifted from relationship building to disruption, and Daniel was a man of relationships. Veteran colleagues grew distant, not out of distrust, but fear. They realized seasoned employees with strong client ties were targets. Daniel was the prime example. His client bonds were built over years, lunches, after-hours meetings, times when the company needed someone trustworthy. But now, those same ties were seen as a threat to the centralized model Leonard aimed to implement ahead of a possible company sale. One afternoon, while reviewing a quarterly report, Daniel noticed that 3 key accounts had been reassigned to other executives without warning. When he asked the CRM department, the response was awkward. Board decisions, redistribution by profile fit. It was clear they were dismantling his portfolio piece by piece. Still, Daniel didn't confront anyone. It wasn't his style to act impulsively. He preferred to observe and document. He kept a personal file of all account changes, internal emails, and memos, not out of fear, out of strategy. He knew this was just the beginning. On the surface, he remained calm and efficient, but inside, a seed had been planted. He wouldn't become a martyr, and he certainly wouldn't leave Aurora looking defeated. Something much bigger was being prepared, and he would wait patiently for the right moment. The day after his termination, Daniel woke up early, as usual. Habit was still stronger than the new emptiness on his calendar. He made his coffee slowly, watching the city from his apartment window. The movement outside contrasted with the stillness inside, a forced pause that for the first time in years allowed him to think calmly. No pressure from goals, emails, or meetings. The silence that filled the room was almost therapeutic. Daniel mentally replayed everything that had happened. He tried fitting the pieces together, the leadership's change in behavior, Leonard's coldness, the steady account reassignments. Every memory revealed a hidden layer of a larger plan. His firing wasn't impulsive. It was part of a cold, calculated strategy, likely tied to a larger transition. The box with his belongings remained in the office corner. It seemed like an artifact from another era. Inside were symbols of a devoted career, his daughter's photo, the award, the fountain pen, objects that might seem trivial, but now carried the weight of an entire journey. Daniel didn't feel anger. He felt an unusual clarity, the understanding that he had done everything right, even if the ending seemed unfair. He wasn't removed for incompetence. Quite the opposite. He was too efficient, too connected, too valuable. That's why he became a threat to the new leadership. Instead of updating his resume or job hunting that day, Daniel did something else. He opened his old contact list, carefully backed up over the years. He reviewed names, faces, histories, victories. These weren't just clients, they were people. His connections weren't based on aggressive pitches, but on presence, delivery, and empathy. At the end of the day, he wrote down 3 names. 3 companies whose CEOs admired him for who he was, not for the Aurora nameplate he once wore. He took a deep breath. With one call to each, he could spark a chain reaction. But he wouldn't act out of anger. He would act strategically, with elegance, at the right time, because Daniel understood something Leonard had clearly overlooked. Power isn't in titles or org charts. It's in the relationships you build over time. And that kind of capital, unlike money, only grows with maturity. The next morning, Daniel's plan crystallized. He wasn't the type for dramatic confrontations or emotional social media posts. He always knew real impact happens quietly, behind the scenes. So that's how he decided to move. 3 direct, objective phone calls, charged with trust and history. The first call was to Helen Rogers, CEO of Xenix Technologies. She couldn't hide her shock and indignation when she heard about Daniel's departure. "They've lost their minds. You were the safest bridge we had there," Within 20 minutes, Helen said exactly what Daniel needed to hear. "If you go somewhere else, let me know. I'll take our account with you." The second call was to Mark Adams, owner of Avanti Industrial Solutions, a tough, demanding client, but one who trusted Daniel deeply. As soon as he heard the reason for the call, his reaction was even more direct. "If you're not there, I'm not staying. I'm not negotiating with people who don't understand loyalty." The third call, perhaps the most symbolic, was to Claire Mitchell, president of Arcus Holdings, a giant in the logistics sector. For Claire, Daniel was more than just a sales executive. He was a strategic partner. She listened silently and responded with a simple but powerful sentence. "Let me know where you're going. I'll follow." Those three conversations were like tipping the first domino. There were no heated speeches, just a quiet acknowledgement that the bond of trust between client and company had been broken. Aurora's real value wasn't in its processes. It was in the people who built genuine relationships, and Daniel was undeniably one of its greatest assets. In the days that followed, the movement began silently. Contracts were reviewed, legal. Teams initiated transition procedures, and inside Aurora, rumors spread. What's happening with Zenix, Avanti, and Arcus accounts? Leonard tried to maintain control, but it was too late. Daniel's true power wasn't in a badge, it was in the deep trust he had earned. Daniel remained discreet. No interviews, no provocative messages. He just observed. The game had already started to turn, and he hadn't even needed to raise his voice. What started with 3 discreet phone calls quickly turned into a wave that Aurora Corporate Solutions couldn't contain. In the week following the decisions by Zenix, Avanti, and Arcus, other companies began questioning their relationships with Aurora. What initially seemed like isolated moves became a trend, and at the center of it, Daniel Morgan's name circulated quietly through the corporate world as a symbol of trust and integrity. Leonard Vance, the new VP of Sales, soon realized he had underestimated Daniel's social capital. Aurora had bet on a cold, performance-driven restructuring, ignoring an invisible but vital pillar, the loyalty built over years of partnership. Now the structure was cracking. Internal reports showed an alarming spike in contract termination requests. The finance department raised the alert. If we lose 2 more accounts the size of Arcus, we face operational risk. Inside the company, the atmosphere was tense. Customer service teams were overwhelmed trying to save contracts, while the legal department scrambled to review exit clauses. Each day, new emails titled "Account Termination Request" hit managers' inboxes. Nobody knew exactly how to act. The contracts weren't being lost due to technical failures, but because of a broken sense of trust. And no legal clause could fix that. Leonard attempted to reverse the trend with emergency meetings, bonus promises, and direct outreach to fleeing CEOs. But it was too late. Clients weren't just leaving Aurora, they were following Daniel. Meanwhile, Daniel watched quietly from the sidelines. He hadn't accepted any new offers yet, though they flooded in. He knew what he wanted, not power, but purpose. To lead differently, in a world where people were not disposable. Aurora's stock price, once stable, began to plummet. Investors caught wind of the instability and started selling. Word spread something was very wrong inside Aurora. When it was revealed that the company had been negotiating a strategic sale and that losing key accounts jeopardized the deal, the damage was irreversible. Daniel said nothing publicly. His actions spoke louder than any press release. While Aurora was sinking and Leonard struggled to patch the ship, Daniel kept quiet. But behind the scenes, his phone buzzed with opportunity. Multinational corporations, ambitious startups, investment funds, all wanted the man who had dismantled A giant without lifting his voice. One call stood out. Robert Barrett, CEO of Elevate Group, a medium-sized company with big expansion plans. Robert was direct. "I've followed your journey, Daniel. What you did, it's priceless. I don't want an employee. I want a partner." They met for coffee. What was supposed to be a 1-hour chat stretched into 4. Daniel saw in Robert something rare, a strategic mind that believed in people first. The offer was clear. Daniel would have complete autonomy to build a new business division and a share of the profits. No oppressive hierarchies, no unreachable targets, no fake motivational speeches. Just real work with real purpose. Daniel accepted. Joining Elevate Group, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The company was small, processes were still developing, but it was fertile ground. Without effort, Daniel brought with him Xenix, Avanti and Arcus, who signed on within 2 weeks. The influx of these giants immediately changed Elevate's market status. But Daniel didn't stop there. He restructured teams, implemented transparency policies, opened direct client communication channels, and personalized team training. Results soon followed. Elevate shifted from emerging competitor to innovative leader. Meanwhile, Aurora continued to crumble. Without strategic contracts, the sale collapsed. Leonard faced scrutiny from the board. Rumors of his dismissal circulated, but it barely mattered. The company's reputation was shattered, and reputation, like porcelain, doesn't mend once broken. At Elevate, Daniel wasn't just a new executive. He had found a true home, a place where loyalty, trust, and people mattered more than any KPI. With his new life at Elevate blossoming, Daniel thought he had closed the Aurora chapter, but a call from an old ally reopened it. It was Laura Carter, his former assistant at Aurora. Quiet, loyal, and observant, she had seen what others missed. "We need to talk," she said. They met at a discreet cafe. Visibly nervous, Laura laid it out. "Your firing was orchestrated. It wasn't about your performance. It was a requirement for Aurora's sale." According to Laura, Aurora's board had been negotiating a sale for months with an international investment group. The main condition: reduced dependence on key figures with strong client ties. Daniel, with his influence, was a risk. The buyers wanted predictable assets, not powerful individuals. You were the biggest obstacle. While you were there, the company was yours in practice, even if not on paper, Laura said. Leonard Vance had been hired specifically for the cleanup job. Professionalize the team, sever personal client relationships, and turn people into mere account managers. Laura also revealed something worse. After Daniel left, some clients were pressured to stay under stricter contract terms and with less support. The plan backfired, dissatisfaction grew, and exits became inevitable. Daniel thanked Laura for her courage. Hearing the truth confirmed what he had always suspected. His value was never the problem. It was his irreplaceability. As he left the cafe, Daniel called Robert. "We have a story to tell, not about revenge, about how the corporate world needs to change." The plan was set, and the perfect stage was already waiting, a national innovation conference where Daniel would be a keynote speaker. The auditorium was packed. Executives, entrepreneurs, investors, and corporate professionals filled the seats for InnovaCorp, one of the nation's top business innovation conferences. Daniel's name was listed among the featured speakers, causing curiosity. After all, he had kept a low profile since leaving Aurora. Walking onto the stage, Daniel didn't introduce himself with titles. Instead, he asked one question: how much is trust worth? Silence. Without naming companies or individuals, Daniel recounted his journey, how a culture obsessed with numbers often forgets that people drive business. "We were taught that results come from processes and spreadsheets, but people sign contracts. People save negotiations with a phone call." He presented data, graphs, and testimonials showing how trust-based relationships, not aggressive tactics, built corporate success. They removed me because I was non-transferable. Ironically, that made me indispensable. The audience was mesmerized. Daniel spoke authentically, without buzzwords or corporate jargon. He shared how Elevate Group grew because it valued relationships over cold metrics. At the end, he revealed a final surprise. All the companies that migrated with him grew stronger after the transition, not through luck, but because when fear is removed, true performance emerges. Loyalty can't be bought. It must be earned. The standing ovation came before he even finished. Journalists, entrepreneurs, young professionals all surrounded him afterward, but Daniel simply thanked them and moved forward. That day, he didn't just reclaim his story. He launched a new leadership model, one built on respect, presence, and humanity.